Welcome to the GAB Talks by the Independent Press Award. I'm your hostess, Gabby Olzak. Today, we will be chatting with Jamie Andrea Garzot, author of Unconventional, a memoir of entrepreneurism, politics, and pot, a distinguished favorite in the 2022 Independent Press Award for Business. A groundsbreaking cannabis retailer, city official, and public advocate, Jamie is truly a pioneer in the industry. Over the span of 11 years, Jamie grew 3 retail stores, 40 employees, and $12 million in annual revenue. In 2020, Jamie sold her business to High Times. She received a degree in English from San Diego University. Jamie is a Sonoma County native. Unconventional is her debut novel. Congratulations, Jamie. I'm so happy you're joining us. Welcome to the GAB Talks.
Thank you so much, Gabby. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you. So, Jamie, tell us about the path less traveled, Robert Frost's home, and how that ties into the unconventional you.
Well, something that I do talk about in that chapter is kind of the gradual awareness that throughout the course of my life, I have consistently chosen that path less traveled, that unconventional route over, for whatever it may be. But it's something that as I've gotten older, I choose more consciously, just because I think that is part of what will yield the most interesting experiences. And for me, that's what life is all about, is really just enjoying and savoring all that life has to offer through those rich experiences. And definitely when I embarked on my cannabis journey back in 2009, it was a conscious choice to take that path less traveled. I mean, this was pre-legalization, pre-regulation, and it was kind of a Wild West still. And so I had a good corporate job, solid, stable paycheck, and my family was a little bit surprised to learn that I was leaving all that behind to go down the cannabis road. But it's something that I've never regretted, and it's been just the most incredible journey, which is why I felt I needed to write a book about it.
Right, which is I'll get to that question. We'll get to that one. But what I want to know is, I know a lot of our listeners are wondering, you said you didn't delve into the cannabis industry to make money, which is unconventional right there. So why did you?
So, again, this is something that does come up in the book, and it's a question that I get asked often, how did you get into this industry? And because, I'm not and was never a real consistent cannabis user. It wasn't a cornerstone in my life in any way until I started using it for sleep. So it's somewhat unconventional that I don't come from like a pot background, the 420 stoner culture. And it was, something of a risk, a new experience for me. But, I'd always had a dream to have my own business. And in 2008 and 2009, my stars kind of started to align that I had this opportunity. And it was, something that I saw kind of lining up. I saw those green lights lining up for me. And I decided to follow them and open that store and see what happened, because I never wanted to be in a position where I looked back later in life and went, God, I wish I would have. I wonder what would have happened if I had, taken that first step down that road less traveled. And it's, of course, I didn't really expect it to be all that it was, like all of the incredible ups, all the incredible downs. But I don't regret any of them, even the lowest lows, because it's all part of the experience.
So what was the biggest mistake you think you made during that whole journey? And what's your greatest success?
I think, for me, the greatest, I'll start with the easy one, I guess, which is the greatest success. And I think, growing my team, growing the 2 stores, the 3 companies total, 4 if you include the edible line, but growing all of that to running a team of 40. And, and they were all primarily full-time employees, and seeing their personal and professional growth over the time that they worked for me, because I had just some incredible team members for a lengthy amount of time. And watching their individual growth. And that to me, and maybe that is surprising because it's not at all cannabis related. It's not at all book related. But that for me was truly the greatest success, is being able to offer people that opportunity, people that really wanted to get into the industry and work in the trenches and learn the industry from the ground up, because that's kind of where it starts, is customer facing with the product. And so that to me is without question the greatest success, is being able to do that for people. As far as the biggest mistake, I'm going to also tie this into my team, because I think there were, early on as a business owner, there were some people that I should have let go sooner than I did. And it's really hard. That's a hard decision to make. It's a hard decision to come to and to realize this is what you have to do. But something that I learned later on was that it was so much better if somebody was not a fit for any number of reasons, to just come to that realization, have the hard conversation sooner rather than later, because of the disruption that it does create for the entire team, the entire organization, when you try to make a situation work that just shouldn't work. So
yeah, that is a difficult spot to be in. So tell us about, you sold the business to High Times in 2020 at what seems like the pinnacle of success during the business. What motivated you to then write Unconventional?
So, it was not something that I can take credit for having the idea myself, really. But it was kind of towards the end of the acquisition. And I'd hired a consulting firm, Hunt Equity, to kind of manage the process and help me through this acquisition. Because I mean, this is totally out of my league. I'd never done anything like this before. But I was smart enough to realize I needed help. So I hired some consultants on mergers and acquisitions. And it was a gentleman by the name of Andrew Lampert, who was one of my consultants. And it was probably in June or July. The acquisition closed in August. So it's just been 2 years. But at one point, just a very casual conversation, he said something like, well, yeah, you should write a book. And I went, yeah. And I just kind of blew him off. And then, I don't know, a couple of weeks later, he said something about it again. And I, again, blew him off. Yeah. Whatever, Andrew. And the third time he said it, I said, okay, what gives? Why won't you let this book thing go? He said, Jamie, you've had an incredible journey, and to see this industry from where it was in a wild west all the way through legalization and regulation, and to grow your businesses to the point where they're attracting this type of attention. He goes, that's something unique, and you have a very unique perspective that I think you could share with others and really help some people, in a multitude of ways. And so that third time that he said it really stuck with me. And that's when I started to put together, just in my mind, not on paper or on a computer or anything, just kind of, okay, how am I going to do this? How am I going to write this book? And even that, how I wrote it ended up being somewhat unconventional, but
we'll share that with us, Jamie, because I've heard this story and I love it. And I'm a little jealous of it, to be honest with you. So share this with our listeners.
So I'm a very active individual. I don't sit still well. And I've done a number of, speaking engagements, and I'm always pacing. And even if I'm on the phone doing interviews that aren't video, I'm usually pacing my house, right? Because I think really well when I'm in motion. And so when I had committed in my mind to write the book, I'm sitting there staring at my computer going, there's no way in hell that I can park my butt in this chair and like clack away at a keyboard for, however. No, that's just, knowing me, that's not going to happen. So how am I going to write this book? And what I realized is that I needed to be in motion. And so I downloaded Google Docs onto my phone, the app, and I got into this little routine. And so I would get up in the morning and I would get my German Shepherd Zeus, get his leash on, and we'd go down to the beach and we'd walk. We did like 6 or 7 miles. And I would think during that walk, okay, well, what 2 sections of the book do I want to talk about? Like what topics, what issues, what do I want to hit on? I would just do 2 a day. And I would start to formulate during that, couple of hours that I was out there, maybe phrases, maybe like, oh yeah, I gotta, like a memory, I gotta talk about that. So I'd get it together. I'd go back to my house, I'd grab a little snack, I'd drop off the dog and I'd get the bike and I'd go back to the beach and I would open up my app and I'd hit the little microphone and I would start walking up and down the beach and just talking my book. Because it was all here, it was all in my mind. And it wasn't that difficult to put what was already here into words. And so I would do that until I either covered my topics or drained my phone battery. And then I would be done for the day. And then a couple days later, I would go back and I'd open it up on my laptop and then I would edit. But it also was so fast because even the fastest, typist, you're still going to be slower than how the rate at which we speak. So the manuscript kind of built out really, really quickly. And I was also able to do it in a way that worked for my lifestyle, for my personality. And that also the end result, which I didn't really see coming, is that the book reads very conversationally, like you're talking to me because you are.
Yes, it does. It does.
And I like that because I think it's not a difficult read at all. But again, that wasn't something that I planned into it. It was just me trying to, think outside a traditional box and come up with a way of writing, the book that worked for me in a way that I could kind of stomach, because there was no way I was going to sit in a chair for, however long.
For sure. Well, unconventional and fantastic. So, it's your debut novel. What would you recommend? What's the biggest piece of advice you could recommend to someone who is aspiring to write a memoir specifically? Because that is definitely a very different genre. What would you recommend?
So I would say, think about like how, for me, I finding a way that works for me to put it together. It's very daunting to look at that blank page, be it, actual paper. I don't know if anybody uses it anymore, but some people I'm sure do. The bank and it's and it could be a big enough obstacle that some people never so we need to think outside the box and maybe do something like dictation, but find a way that works for you, that is productive, that can get you started. But because I think once you start, it's easier to keep going. But like starting is I think that no matter what genre you're writing, it is probably a big obstacle.
Absolutely.
But then also looking at, with a memoir, there's a lot of things that are deeply personal that come out. And certainly in my book, there were some things that were difficult to talk about and difficult to reflect back on. And that was something that I've been asked before, is like, wow, that must have been really difficult putting yourself out there like that. And I think it comes down to, what do you want more? Do you feel strongly enough about your story and your message that you will get past whatever, insecurities or fears you have? Or are you going to let the fear determine your path? And so for me, I've always been one that is, no, I want the thing more. So I'm going to do whatever I need to do to make that happen. But
that's great advice. You did share some very intimate memories, Jamie. How did your past shape who you are as a person and as an entrepreneur?
I think, certainly the loss of my mom at a very early age was paramount. And I think in some ways strangely liberating, because I kind of learned early on, if I can live without this person. And this wasn't something that, I realized right when she passed, because I was 8 years old, but you learn, quickly as a child, if I can live without this person who is supposed to guide me through this life, then I can really do a lot on my own and for myself. And so that independence, the independence that came with the loss of her, I think was very, very freeing, very liberating, because at that point you can kind of create yourself and build whatever you want. I mean, there's no boundaries at that point. And it's a strange way to look at it, but I think it's also a positive way. And I think that, and also my father who had taught me, I'm no better than anybody else, but that I can be whatever I want. And so all of those things kind of coming together, really just created an independence and a determination to forge my own path and to walk that path.
So how do you think that Unconventional can inspire women specifically?
Well, I think, and that is my hope of this book, that it does inspire people, and why I wrote it to begin with. But I want people to see that, I'm just a regular person. I didn't have a lot to begin with. Both, growing up in like as a child, but then also when I started my business, like you can start from very humble beginnings and achieve great success if you believe in two things. And these are things that I talk about, is that having faith in your vision, what your dream, your passion, whatever it is, having faith in that it is a good one. But then also having belief in yourself and faith in yourself that you can execute on that dream, on that passion, on that idea, whatever it is. Yeah.
What do you think that you would do differently if you had to? I know we talked about employees, but I'm talking about discoveries about yourself as you were writing the novel. Did you step back at one point as you were writing your memoir? Did you step back at one point and think, gee, I haven't thought about that for a while, and maybe I would have done that differently? And how would that have impacted you, or do you think it would have not?
No, I don't. So yes, there were parts in the book, parts of writing throughout the process of writing the manuscript, that were difficult to recall, that were painful in some ways. But at no point, and maybe this will surprise you, but at no point do I wish I would have done things or did I look back and say I wish I would have done that differently, or I wish it hadn't turned out like that. And here's why. Every single thing that happened to me was a learning experience. And at the end of the day, at today, where I am in my life, I like who I am, and I'm a happy person. And I wouldn't be where I am today in my mind and how viewing in myself. I'm not talking about financial, I'm not talking about success, any of that, but who I am as a person. I wouldn't be in this place if anything had happened differently. Everything unfolded exactly as it was meant to. And so I would do it all again, and I would do it again in the same way. And I don't know if that sounds strange, but I genuinely mean that.
No, not at all.
Because of where I am today.
I feel like every experience we have builds on who we are. So I completely agree with you. Now, Unconventional, I know it's a memoir, but it really is also a blueprint, if you will, on how to launch a successful business, how to be a successful person. What is the most important lesson, Jamie, that you want the readers to take away from reading Unconventional?
I think I'm going to repeat something that I said, and I really hope that people that read it walk away with an empowered feeling that they can do it too, that they can follow their dream, that maybe they have confidence to, and it could be anything. It doesn't have to be go out and start a business. Maybe they want to run for their school board. Maybe they want to, open up a shoe store, or just go back to college or change careers, whatever it is. But that is my hope.
And so who's your audience? Who's your audience, and what's your goal for Unconventional?
Well, this was something that I talked at length with my publisher about. And as far as the audience, that's a tough one for me to answer, because I think there's a lot of crossover in potential audiences. I think definitely people that are, readers that want an inspiring story on business success. I mean, I think they're going to hopefully enjoy the book. But I think it could be local politicians that, are in a state where cannabis has been made newly legal, and they're looking for an insider's perspective on what is an operation like, what are the people like that run it, what is, the kind of little industry nuggets that come up. It's I think not maybe a how-to, but and just a little snapshot of what the industry is like. Maybe state legislators, anybody that has an interest in the industry, maybe people that are not supportive of cannabis. I think there's some readership there too that want that glimpse of what it is really like. Because even though the book isn't totally about the industry, it's the backdrop. So you're going to absorb a lot about the industry just through reading it. So I think there's readership there. People that want, a story about a female who succeeded in the business world kind of on her own without investment dollars. There's that. But I don't think the readership is just women either. There's I think there's potential for a lot of different types of readers that maybe wouldn't cross genres or cross over each other, but
it's about a lot of things. It's entertaining, it's inspiring. You've definitely educated us. Jamie, what impact do you feel that you had on the cannabis industry? Because you definitely are a pioneer. And second question to follow that up with is, why do you think it's important for there to be full federal legalization of cannabis?
So, I think the local government perspective and the local government assistance and outreach that I did was truly necessary, because there's just it's cannabis is not it's controversial, it's sometimes misunderstood, and I think that local government piece, that outreach, where you can bring the officials in, because they're the regulators. I mean, even if we do get federal legalization, and as the states kind of one by one start to legalize, the rules and regulations are really implemented at the local level, and that's what I think sometimes gets forgotten, is the importance of that local government outreach. It's critical. It was critical to my operations and to success of the industry, kind of coming into its own throughout California. And then what was the second? Oh, the federal piece.
Yeah, that was an interesting nugget in your book, which is funny and cringy at the same time. Yeah,
right. And I think it's so there's still, I think, some conversations happening around, well, how can this be legal at the state level when it's illegal at the federal level? And I don't know that's kind of a big thing to talk about right now. But what happens in every state in the country, and until we have federal legalization, is that the banking system still does not want to allow cannabis operators in. And that's because the funds are all federally insured, and the banking institutions, by and large, and I'm talking about 90%, because we are starting to see some local credit unions, some smaller banks that are, implementing their own regulations to bank these businesses. But about 90% of us, my stores never had banks, unfortunately. So what that means is that we're all cash. And when you start thinking about my operations, trending at $12 million a year annually, and literally every penny coming in is in cold hard currency, that's a problem. And it's a problem not only from a security perspective and standpoint, but from just a management and payroll dollars and time. And how do you account for all of that? How do you track all of that? So federal legalization is a big thing, and it's coming someday. It's anybody's guess as to when, but until we get the federal government on board, then we are still going to see banking institutions, financial institutions that will not touch this industry, and it makes everybody have to default to being cash operators, and it's no fun.
No,
I mean, you asked me if there was something I could change. Maybe I would change that.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you wrote about that in your book, and that was really frightening. I don't know how you got through that. So Unconventional is really a great book, and congratulations.
Thank you.
You don't seem to be the type of person, Jamie, that's just going to loaf around, even if it's on the beach. So what projects are you working on now? And do you have any plans for another book? Please say yes.
So I'm kind of glad you gave me the opportunity to talk about this, because this is, so first of all, I don't know if I'm going to write again. I might, and I'm thinking something is brewing back here, but Towards the end of last year, I came to a very surprising realization. And it was a realization that I think was kind of starting throughout writing the book. I think the book was kind of a catalyst for this realization, and it was an awakening. And it was the realization that I'm gay. And I just turned 50 in June. So at the end of last year, right before the book was, this book was coming out in spring, I was in a relationship with a man, and fantastic individual and a really stable, solid relationship. But a number of things kind of led to this realization that that I am, in fact, a lesbian. And all of the kind of shift, my whole world has been in some ways turned upside down for the better. But reinventing myself and my whole worldview at 50 years old was not something that I really saw coming. I mean, that in itself is unconventional. It's very Glennon Doyle of me, I realize.
Yes. Wonderful.
So, going through that process, and we're in August now, but that has really been a big thing, a tremendous shift in my life. And I'm not sure how much time we have, but just a lot of things have happened since that. Not just the ending of my relationship with Jim, who is in the book, and he's a wonderful man. We are still friends. We are very dear friends still. He's been incredibly supportive. But then, what that means for me, and there might be another story there.
It sure sounds like it. I mean, we're all interested, Jamie, and I think that's fantastic. I'm so happy for you, and I know that our readers will be as well. You've shown tremendous courage, and you're inspirational, and we would love to hear more about this. Absolutely. Share away. So does that connect with any projects that you're working on now?
Not necessarily. It's, when I was writing Unconventional, I did so much prep work in my mind, and I'm kind of doing that very loosely now, putting together the perspective that I want the book to be seen from, and what stories I want to tell. And it's still happening in real time. I mean, I think that's maybe what's causing me more hesitation than anything else, is this is very, very raw and very new and still happening. So it's there. It's brewing back there, but I do think it needs more time as I continue to walk this path of what it means to come out so late in life. But it's exciting, and it feels incredible to finally accept and embrace who I've always been, but haven't really acknowledged up until now. And I think there's some things that I can take from my business success, like the confidence that I've built through building the stores, writing the book, that have certainly helped me now with this realization, with this midlife awakening, because that's exactly what it is. So yes, I think I will write again, but I'm gonna need some time.
So taking a step back and again processing all of this, what is your biggest takeaway from Unconventional that you can share with your readers?
That you never know where life is going to take you. You never know when you set your foot out that door, what's going to come. And I mean that both literally and figuratively, but and just looking at my cannabis story as an example, when I had my vision to create a different type of a store, I never dreamed that it would end up where it did. And I think that is my point, is that the journey is so much more, I think, even more rewarding than the destination. I mean, maybe there is no destination, because I opened the stores, had tremendous success, sold them, wrote a book. I mean, I don't know where the journey ends, and maybe it shouldn't. Maybe it should always be evolving. My journey, my story should always be evolving, changing, growing, and that is the point. I think, at least that's my takeaway.
I agree. And we are definitely going to stay tuned, Jamie, to see where your journey continues to take you. How can listeners purchase Unconventional and find out a little bit more about you?
Sure. So my website is jamieandreagarzot.com, and there's some information there. There's links to purchase it. It is on Amazon. Fortunately, I have a unique last name, so a simple, search using my last name will pull up all types of information. And I'm on social media, TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, and you can connect with me there.
Fantastic. Well, Jamie, this was so much fun. Thank you so much for joining us today. And until our next podcast, keep on reading. This is Gabby Olzak of the GAB Talks.
Thanks, Gabby. Pleasure.